this very much.
Welcome to
Coffee with Toffees.
Let's do this.
Good evening and welcome back to a new episode of Coffee with Toffees, guys. I know we did a show last night, but we're bringing you a show tonight because things are crazy in the world of Dota as we get closer and closer to the event that we all know and love, TI. This episode of Coffee with Toffees is brought to you by our gracious sponsors, Razer, the maker of computer peripherals and some of the finest gaming equipment on the planet, for gamers, by gamers. We're represented by mm1.fm. That is an app that you can get for free on your Android and iPhone device that gives you up-to-date info on Dota 2 specifically, as well as other esports, including the ability to download podcasts directly to your phone. So I know that they are going to be syndicating some of our episodes. So if you want an alternative to just downloading the iTunes and want something accessible, mm1.fm is your go-to. And finally, Betway is a company that does real money betting. They're not just about esports, they're about everything. I've talked to some experts before we allowed them to come on as a sponsor who have confirmed that they are a well-known and well-respected betting organization. And if you're going to trust your money to somebody, these are the guys to do it with. There's a link actually on the Twitch account where you can go straight there. From this Twitch stream. So check them out. These are people who are investing in esports and supporting Coffee with Toffees. That said, let's talk about our guest. I am joined by Gorgon the Wonder Cow. He's at the Wonder Cow over on Twitter. We bring him on because he is the quintessential analyst. Is a senior writer for Join Dota. I think stood in as an EIC there for a while. Has been doing a lot of opportunity stuff as far as covering esports from an analytical standpoint. And I know for a fact that when the patch notes came out, Gorgon was up all night poring over them so that he could write an article for Join Dota. The article is still up. I think it's called The Top 10 Things You Need to Know or something of that. But Gorgon, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing really well. I'm still going over the patch, looking at various changes to specific heroes. Now, I kind of brushed over the hero changes for my top 10 article, but now I'm kind of going through them. So anybody who wants to stay up to date with the stuff that I find out specifically regarding metrics on new heroes, make sure you're following my Twitter because I'm putting stuff up there probably all day today and tomorrow.
Nice. So you get some Twitter metrics up there if you want to get into the deep stuff. Check out the article already up on Join Dota. And I heard that you have another article coming out. Is it today or tomorrow?
It should be tomorrow, I think. Yeah, I have a metagame Fortnite that's been written for a little while now, and we've just been waiting for an opportunity to put it up because there was Star Series, and now there's this patch release, and we're just looking for a good time to put it up.
Absolutely. So that should be coming out tomorrow. It'll be the last. It'll be nice because it'll be a metagame update at the back end of the current metagame, right? So it'll be like probably the last thing that's posted before the new patch comes out tomorrow. Guys, if you didn't know, there is a I don't know if it's a statistical chance. There's a very good chance that tomorrow night we see the patch. Traditionally, Thursday night's been sort of patch night in Dota 2. I expect to see it go live, and I'm very excited about that. Also, if you guys didn't know, and we'll cover this briefly because it's worth talking about, the Summit 3 has just announced the talent list of people who will be attending the event. It's a very exciting list, and I will tell you right now that yours truly is on the list. So I will be headed out to LA to attend the Summit 3, help out with some staffing, as well as do a couple of on-screen appearances as well. So I'm not the go-to interviewer. Their Hotbed will be there, and he's sort of a legend in the field, so I could never hope to usurp the man. But I will be there to help out and do a couple of fun junkets. That said, somebody that you know, Wonder Cow, Prove Attitude, is also on the list, and she's a friend of ours. We worked with Sivo. She's actually coming out because her and I are going to put together some storyline packages for the event. So one of my complaints that all of you know as fans has been that there's not enough storyline coverage at these Dota events. When you watch NFL or major events like that, they always have these sort of player stories and really cool arcs that draw less hardcore fans into the world of Dota, and we're going with the intention of creating some of these storyline packages to produce during the summit. So we'll give you more on that. I'll have Proof come by and talk later on this month about what we're doing, but it'll be a lot of fun. That said, let's get right into the analysis because that is why we are here. So Gorgon, I went over the list, and I'm going to pop it up on screen, guys, on the full screen just so you can kind of see what we're working with here. This is the game update. It is very, very big. So I'm hard scrolling, and this is literally everything that's come out. We're still scrolling. We're going all the way down the bottom. Changes for almost every single hero, and then you get past that, and you get to new items. I'm going to name the new items for you guys, just so that if we don't talk about them, you at least know that they're there. Enchanted Mangoes, Lotus Orb, Glimmer Cape, Guardian Greaves, Moon Shard, Silver Edge, Solar Crest, Octarian Core. Now, when the last patch came out, they added a little something called the, what's that new armor that we got? It's slipping my mind right now. Crimson Guard. They added the Crimson Guard to the game, and I said to myself, man, adding a whole new item to the game, that is bold, and that is a really interesting decision. And it turns out that they liked it so much that they decided to add a whole lot more. So just be aware of that. If you log in tomorrow and you haven't had a chance to listen to anything, there's going to be a lot more stuff in the shop recipes list for you to buy. So be prepared. Now, Gorgon, when you look at this list, as a casual player, or as a player who, I would say not casual, I take the game seriously. I want to win. It's important to me to not suck at this game. That said, I am not PPD. I'm not Blitz. I am not Purge. I'm not a god of Dota. What do I need to know to expect in my 3K MMR bracket or below? What do I need to sort of understand before I log in the first time?
All right, well, as a casual tryhard, the first thing you're going to need to understand is that the mechanics underlying farm and gold have been really significantly changed, such that as a farming carry, you're going to have to expect to be active with less, and as a support, you're going to have to expect to be active and provide more throughout all stages of the game. So this is really a support patch. This is a patch that benefits supports literally at all stages of the game. No active support received a nerf whatsoever, with the very, very minor exception if you include a nerf to an Ags, then Treant Protector could nerf. But no Captain's Mode support that's an established support took a nerf this patch.
Okay.
They're really... The goal of the patch seems to be to make sure that supports are providing more and being provided with more by their team. Supports are going to be getting more kills from gold. They're going to be losing or giving up less gold when they are killed. And carries are going to be getting less farm from ancients and lane creeps.
Okay.
So all of that combined just means that as a support, your job is going to be much more heavily rotation and a lot less make sure your carry is able to last hit.
Right. Okay, so it's a support patch, and I'm sure a lot of us probably get stuck with support sometimes, but generally like to play that carry position or the mid. I'm not speaking for everybody, because I myself prefer to play support in most pub matches because it's sort of my mentality or style of play. When it comes to carries, is there anybody... Did they finally fix some of these broken heroes? What changes came down that we really need to know about?
Yeah, so the top 5 core heroes, the Bat Rider, Troll Warlord, Axe, Juggernaut, Sniper. In terms of pro play, those were your top 5. All 5 of them received nerfs. Sniper, Juggernaut, Troll Warlord all received pretty significant nerfs. Bat Rider received a significant nerf that you could work around. Honestly, you don't see Bat Rider in pubs as often anyway because he requires a fair amount of coordination.
Right.
And Axe received a nerf that you can still play through it. It's really a very small increased cast point for his call, and a relatively notable reduction of the bonuses that you get after you successfully dunk somebody.
So is this the akin to the sort of like mini Juggernaut nerf that we had a couple of months back, where I don't know if you remember that Jug sort of was mini nerfed. Yeah, but he still, I mean, is God mode and top pick. So is that sort of the same idea?
I think for Axe, this is really a balancing nerf, whereas for the other Juggernaut nerf was like a warm-up for something more appropriate, quite honestly. Juggernaut received a couple of really minor technical buffs that nobody at a 3K level is going to notice. But for the most part, he received a bunch of nerfs as well, including a really notable nerf that he no longer has a mini-stun with Onyx Slash. That is a very, very significant nerf. No longer is he going to be able to do anything about an opponent who's trying to channel or TP. So...
Okay, so are those heroes that were overpowered that, you know, were sort of snap-picked at the back end of this patch, are they going to pretty much fall out of our pub games? And who's going to take their places, do you think?
I don't think that Juggernaut and Sniper are going to fall out of your pub games right away. I think they will fall out over time, especially Sniper, because while he did receive some significant hero nerfs, the biggest nerf that he got, in my opinion at least, are underlying mechanical nerfs. The fact that defending high ground because of some mechanical changes that they made is no longer a reliable strategy, and defending high ground is no longer going to be as lucrative as it was before. In addition, buybacks are much riskier, and they don't have as much payoff as well. So the Sniper, in terms of just a general try-hard pub, with the additional items, he's still going to be a heavy damage dealer in the mid-game, but he's not going to have as high as a win rate just because the underlying principle of the Sniper that I can sit on high ground and hit you from 1,000 units away, that is no longer going to be as effective, and people are going to kind of, I think, figure that out over time rather than just theory crafting it.
Okay, so when I start to log in, when we start to play this new patch, who are the heroes that you think are going to be emerging as really a beneficial pick for us to sort of learn the new system? Because in some ways, this game feels like this patch. I hesitate to say Dota 3 because everybody said Dota 3 when the last patch came out as well.
And every patch since
every patch. Out, yeah. But there's a lot of sweeping changes. I mean, this is a huge shift to style of play, itemization, the idea that you can use permanent stat increases to your hero from items. So based on that, what are going to be the best heroes for me to survive the first couple of weeks of this new patch?
So if you're playing a carry, carries who are aggressively positioned through the mid game or carries who push really well are the carries you're going to want to go into. So the number one carry that honestly I'm looking at in terms of the stats that I would expect to blow up into success is going to be Kunkka. Kunkka has an extremely high early game kill rate. He is, in terms of the last patch, he was only played 11 times, but he has the third highest average KA for the first 5 minutes, and he's up in the top 10 for the first 10 minutes. So because of that, we're going to be probably seeing a fair amount of Kunkka's success. He just has the ability to get a lot of kills early. And in addition, some of the new items work well with him, and he pushes really well. Other heroes that we might be seeing a little bit more of are jungle enchantresses. Enchantress is going to be able to farm much more successfully because she can re-enchant a creep she already has.
Gotcha.
Which means she can now wildkin farm the way a Chen does very reliably. I'm expecting, in terms of other carries, potentially Sven could be very strong, and Legion Commander can be very strong this patch as well. In terms of supports, what we're looking at are really strong 4 spots for the most part. So Tuskar and Night Stalker will probably continue to be very strong through this patch. We are also looking potentially at roaming Mirana becoming a thing again. She has a lot of potential in this patch, especially since Bane and Rubik look fairly strong this patch as well. And they, as a 5-spot, roam very successfully with the Mirana.
So it sounds to me like this is an exciting patch, like you said, for supports, but in the context of, it sounds in a lot of ways, in the past, if you played a 5 or a 4 position in a pub, a lot of times it got frustrating towards the back end, right? Because if your carries couldn't take the late game, you just sort of wasted all your time. It sounds to a certain extent like the 4s may transition better into the late game, or at least have more value through buff items and things like that going forward.
Yeah, I would expect 4 spots to be semi-cores. For like a lot of heroes that used to be considered only core, that since then have gotten a lot of support play, like Nagasiren and Alchemist. Those originally were only core heroes. They eventually became only support heroes. Now they've received significant buffs, either directly or indirectly, that make them very, very strong support heroes that transition really well into semi-cores. And since your cores are going to be less farmed at most stages of the game than they used to be, due to the reduction of lane creep farm, those supports aren't going to be as far behind either, most likely. This patch, for a large portion of the patch, is basically aimed at equalizing the farm between members of a team. Not entirely, but minimizing the gap a little bit.
So let me ask you this, because a feature that I noticed that seems like it could be very prevalent is they changed AoE gold gain on a kill. In the sense of the highest net worth person gets 25% less than they would have gotten otherwise, and that 25% is essentially given to the lowest net worth person in the AoE range. So is that a positive or negative in favor of roaming gank teams? Do you want two supports to be there for the kill so that it's splitting off some of that gold? Or do you want to try and focus on keeping lanes zoned and allowing those carries to just get basic farm. Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, you want to have ideally 3 heroes available for as many of the early game kills as you can.
Okay.
The reason for that is that, or I guess 2 heroes works as well. You want 2 or 3 heroes available for every kill, though. And the reason for that is the gold, the last hit bounty, has been reduced by 100. But the AoE gold that is based out of that, they added some AoE gold that's not the comeback AoE gold.
So if it's a one-person kill, you're technically losing money that
well,
could be
you're
on the
getting
table.
you're getting the flat 100.
Gotcha.
You get that flat 100
Right.
as an AoE that goes just to you. But if you have 2 heroes, you each get 75, which means you net a gain of 50 out of
50.
it. And if you have 3 heroes, you get 40 each, so you net a gain of 20, and then it becomes, after that point, it becomes a flat 100 again. So if you can have 2 or 3 heroes available at every kill, you're going to be maximizing your gold game compared to what you would be expecting on 6.83 or before. In addition, it is really, really nice for roaming heroes to be able to get that extra gold for the AoE.
Right.
But AoE bonus gold is not really impactful for the first 15 minutes of a game, typically. Because you don't really have an advantage, right? Neither team is going to be so far ahead in terms of farm in the early game when you have roamers.
This makes sense.
That the AoE gold even makes a difference. So that's really more of a mid-game, late-game mechanic change than anything else.
Which can help, which should be very functional for helping a 4 make that transition into becoming a semi-carry. So that's an interesting thing about the change to AoE bonus gold. What else do you feel is really sort of important to know about this? We've talked about heroes going to be strong. It sounds like the 4 role is going to be far more important in this patch than it has been in the past. What else do we sort of see coming out of this?
Well, we're going to be looking at a lot of Ganums add-ons.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody, I'm not going to go through all of them because we don't want to take that sort of time, but everybody should take a look and just kind of have an idea of what these Ags upgrades are going to be doing. A lot of them are Ags upgrades which help teammates.
Right.
There are very few Ags upgrades which help an individual. So we're looking at a lot of teamwork-oriented gameplay that's coming out of this patch. And like I said, a lot of potential support-oriented gameplay. Some Ags upgrades that are really notable are Alchemist can buy an Ags and then destroy it to give an ally a permanent Ags that doesn't take up an item slot. And that, by the way, I've done some testing, is a buff that cannot be purged. It does not count as a passive, so if you get hit by a break, which is a new distinguishing class of silence, which basically silences passives, that Ag Scepter from Alchemist does not get broken because it's a buff and not a passive. So there's no way to turn it off. There's no way to get rid of it. Once Alchemist does that to a hero, that hero has a permanent Ags. There is a glitch here, however, I found in my test, that if a hero already owns an Ags, and that hero is given the Ags buff by Alchemist, the hero will not be able to drop or sell their Ags. So make sure you don't cast it on your allies until that is...
Until the Ags is gone.
patched.
That makes sense. Interesting. So Alchemist, do you think he's going to be a relevant hero in this patch, or do you think that's still going to be a lot to farm?
I think he should be. Honestly, the fact that Alchemist was not a relevant support in the last patch is a little surprising, considering in terms of Pro Dota, he had a really good win rate. He has a lot of catch-up potential. He provides a lot. He's a terrible, terrible carry with the comeback mechanics.
Right.
He's a little bit better of a carry now. I think in terms of his support play, he is very viable on this patch. Not only indirectly because he's been buffed by the fact that lane creeps are worth less, but Greevil's Greed gives the same amount of gold. So he's going to farm even faster. Before, at about the 10-minute mark, up until the 10-minute mark, he farmed about 10% faster than an average carry if he was farming a lane. And then from 10 to 30 minutes, he farmed about 20 to 25% faster. That's going to be increased even more because carries are getting less, but he's going to be getting about the same amount from Greevil's Greed.
So to follow up on the Ags thing real quick, somebody asked, TownKillOD asked in Twitch chat, to clarify, does these Ags buff given to you by Alk mute the Ags effect, or is it just keeps you from selling your old Ags?
It just keeps you from selling or dropping your old Ags. So you have a permanent spot in your inventory that you can't use.
So you basically have 2 Ags that do the same thing.
You get the stats buff from both of those Ags, but you don't get any additional bonuses for having a second Ags in terms of your ult.
Right.
And you can no longer use that item slot for the rest of the game.
That makes sense. All right, so I just wanted to clarify.
Probably don't want to do that to your allies.
Okay, so to clarify that, so that's this. I mean, this is good stuff. This is the stuff I think you need to know going into it. Before we get into sort of how do we exploit the patch, what other any opening it up item wise, hero wise, what else do we really need to know when we turn the game on tomorrow and the patch is sitting in our inbox?
All right, so other than those Ags upgrades that you're going to need to watch, obviously new inventory, there are a bunch of new items that you're going to want to look at. Once again, can't go through all of them. Some stuff that you're going to want to be aware of are most of these items are upgrades to items that were not really considered as viable before. You've got a Medallion of Courage upgrade. You've got a couple of Magic Immunity upgrades. Shadow Amulet upgrade. You've got Hyperstone upgrades.
Yep.
You've got Shadowblade upgrades. By the way, another thing that you really want to be looking at if you're thinking about what are some really good combinations on this patch that I can jump out of the gate with, the excuse me, it's called the Silver Cape, I believe. Shadowblade Sange, 300 gold recipe. That on Legion Commander, if you duel with that, it will... the duel will land, and you'll still get the bonus from the Silver Cape, just like with Shadowblade. So you're going to get a 225 damage nuke. You're going to reduce your opponent's damage output for 5 seconds by 30% or something like that. And in addition, you're going to be maiming, going to have additional damage on your attack, and you also break all of their passives, so they have no defensive or aggressive passives while you're dueling them. A very, very good item on Legion Commander. Also very, very good item on Kunkka. Two heroes that I expect to be very powerful on this patch, especially right out of the gate as people are starting to get used to things, but especially with that item. They can be very effective.
What was the name of that item again?
That item is called the Silver Cape.
Silver Cape. I see a Glimmer Cape.
It might be Glimmer Cape, yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
No, let me get the patch notes up. I should have had them up anyway.
I can link them to you.
Yeah, it's called the... No, it's Silver Cape, I think. Glimmer Cape is a different thing. Yeah, Silver Edge. My mistake.
Silver Edge. Okay, I thought that might be a little different.
Glimmer Cape is a Shadow Amulet thing. It's more of a support item.
Silver Edge is sort of the new Shadow Blade that's even crazier.
Right, it's an upgrade to Shadow Blade that makes Shadow Blade maybe a little more viable.
Which I think we'll see pop up on things like Kunkka and Slarks periodically, etc.
Yeah, especially since you need to keep in mind that late game invisibility took a bit of a nerf this patch, because you can now stack observers and sentries in one inventory slot, which means teams are more likely to be carrying sentries as their inventory slots start to fill up. That's something that not a lot of people have really focused on, but the fact that invisibility Shadowblade used to be really fairly effective at maneuvering once you hit that like 45-50 minute mark, because everybody's inventories were full and nobody carried vision.
Right.
That's going to be much less impactful because only one person needs one inventory slot to have both observers and sentries available.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, so item-wise, Silver Edge is, I think, an important item. What else do we need to know?
All right, so what else do we need to know? You're going to be looking at a couple of mechanic fixes. So Centaur, Axe, Timber Saw. When you're looking at reactive skills that react when a hero is attacked, those skills will universally now activate once the attack lands rather than when the attack goes out, which is obviously a bit of a nerf for these heroes. All these heroes except Axe, however, received an upgrade to the amount of damage that they're going to be blocking in some way or some other sort of an upgrade this patch to make up for that loss. But that's something you need to be aware of. It's a widespread change that isn't super impactful, but it is clearly like a thematic change on this patch. Other things that you need to be aware of: auras have also received a really widespread change.
Okay.
For the most part, if an aura is not global, you can assume that it has 900 range now.
Okay.
There are only like 5 positive hero auras that don't have 900 range now. I think you have Essence Aura, Voodoo Restoration, Song of the Siren, which isn't even really an aura, but it has an Axe component now, which is a friendly aura. Healing Ward, which is based out of a unit rather than based out of a hero. Right. And then the 2 globals with Arcane Aura and Precision Aura. So I think that's all of them. So other than that, anything that benefits you or your team positively has 900 range. Okay. Pretty much in the game.
Awesome. So I think that sounds like that's the meat and potatoes of like things that if you don't study the patch notes, if you're the kind of player who just wants to come in and have a good time and doesn't care about the sort of bells, I don't want to say bells and whistles, the nuts and bolts, the fine tuning stuff, which a lot of us, it's not going to matter that much that they take 2. What was it, like when Crystal Maiden lost 2 movement speed? Like, you know, to the average player, that's not that big of a deal. To the pros, that's a huge issue. So that's kind of was the goal here. What I do want to do now is I want to go to a quick commercial break from our sponsors, and when we come back, I'd love Gorgon for you to talk a little bit about if you had to recommend a couple of combos or heroes to help us exploit the first couple of weeks of the patch in our favor, who should we pick? So that said, guys, come back, and we're going to share with you the best way to raise that MMR while nobody else is prepared for it. But before we do that, a word from our sponsors.
Razer Comms is a free all-in-one communication tool that allows you to stay in touch with friends both in and out of the game. With features such as friendless, groups, mobile SMS forwarding, and call notifications, Razer Comms is a communication solution for the dedicated gamer. Razer Comm's minimal in-game overlay has a panel that grabs all your messages and lets you see who is speaking in a voice call without interrupting your game.
Now I'll always know who's breathing into the mic.
It's always me.
By pairing Razer Comm's mobile with your PC, your friends can call you, no matter where you are.
I have been muted that entire time, so
yeah,
I
I
apologize.
could see you chatting on the stream, like I could see your mouth moving, but I couldn't hear anything you were saying. So I'm just going to assume 6.84.
Yep,
Cool.
so 6.84, welcome back, guys. Glad to have you here. We talked a little bit about the patch notes previous, and now what we're going to do is talk really quickly just about what to expect. It's been traditional, Gorgon, that at the beginning of every patch, things emerge that the first people to find it sort of love it, right? The first Mask of Madness Juggernaut, the first Shrapnel build snipers, these people sort of reveled in the glory of these overpowered styles where nobody else knew how to handle it. From looking at the patch notes, for those of our players who would love to pick up a free couple of hundred MMR, what do you think are going to be some really strong combos coming out of the gate?
So in terms of like hero combos, we are looking at things like the classic Mirana Bane, I think, has a lot of potential on this patch, and I have a Twitter post that goes over some of the math behind why I think that. I think Legion Commander, along with pretty much any nuking support, should be very strong. Or we are also looking at potentially Bloodseeker Nature's Prophet as a very strong combo. Bloodseeker received the highest damage increase, sort of indirectly, the highest damage increase of any hero on this patch. He is going up in terms of damage on average in the mid game by about 13. By about about 13 damage.
Okay.
Throughout a good chunk of the mid game, depending on how low your opponents are.
Okay.
So that, alongside the Nature's Prophet, is going to allow you to have a lot of push, a lot of sustain, a lot of global presence. And Nature's Prophet just recently got an Ags upgrade, which will allow him to rat really effectively, while that Bloodseeker just kind of goes around and kills everybody in sight. So I think that's a combination that has a lot of potential as well. Other than that, what we're looking at is basically support combos that roam well together.
Okay.
So anybody alongside a Rubik would be good. Anybody alongside anybody with a hard stun alongside a Mirana would be good. I'm trying to think of what else would pop up. Tiny IO is a classic combination, but Tiny, in terms of a ganker, with this new item, the Silver Cape or whatever it is that we were just talking about, that is actually a really effective item on him. Silver Edge, excuse me.
Silver Edge.
Really effective item on him as well, for similar reasons that it is on the other two. And it will allow him to gank really effectively as well. So I expect Tiny could be very strong in this patch.
Gotcha.
Tiny also received a retro change. They changed the way his toss works back to the way it worked in Dota 1, where he will automatically toss the closest unit to him, rather than a random unit within the AoE. And what this means is that if you have a Silver Edge and you walk in, you hit somebody with this huge nuke, you have a guaranteed toss avalanche combo after that. So the ganking potential of that hero is very strong as well. Other than that, I think there's some potential for some abnormal supports. The Morphling could potentially be a support that we see bubble up in pubs, possibly even low-level pro play. We've seen it a little bit in the past. It could be even a little bit more now. That Morphling has the ability to replicate or to duplicate a hero when he gets an Ags. Even Weaver as a support, I think, has a little bit of potential with that Ags upgrade, which allows him to kind of stay around and play the medic. In addition, the Weaver's bugs have been scaled so that they're much more effective in the early game and less effective in the late game. So his early game damage output, plus the fact that he gives vision early game, is actually going to be very interesting to see as a potential 4-spot as well. So basically, think about creative 4 spots, because creative 4 spots are probably going to be the meat and potatoes of this patch.
Okay. Are there any carries you think are, like, I think that the LC idea is going to come out very strong. Are there any other carries or mids that you think are going to come out of the gate and just people aren't going to expect?
Gyrocopter could potentially go into that mid lane a little bit stronger. The cast point was improved for his Rocket Barrage, which is going to make him a little bit harder to gank. Other than that, I think the field is pretty open, because mid lane and safe lane heroes, for the most part, went basically unchanged. I mean, the Death Prophet, I put a Twitter post about her up. Her damage output from her ult is actually pretty significantly improved now. But and the fact that pushing is much stronger now also benefits her. So you might see a little bit of her, but for the most part, if something was viable in 6.83, it's still viable in 6.84. What you need to think about is, does this hero benefit more from pushing, or does this hero benefit more from defending his own high ground?
Gotcha.
If the latter, probably you'll want to stray away from that hero until you get a good sense of the way the mechanics work on this patch. If the former, then you're probably in a pretty good spot to pick him up.
Okay. So, it sounds pretty relevant, and I think that a lot of these heroes, like, for instance, Death Prophet, are heroes that could also fit into the 4 role and transition well because of the buffs to their skills. So it sounds like it's going to be a patch that, A, has a lot of interesting heroes, and B, if you are savvy and smart, you're going to be able to get those heroes and not have to fight, right? It's not a patch where I'm going to have to argue for mid with somebody. I'm going to be able to log in and say, hey, I'm playing the 4 position, and nobody on my team is going to argue about that. So, you know what I mean? It's kind of crazy. At the beginning of the patch, I can say, I'm going to play the 4, and, you guys are going to like it. And they're going to say, hell yeah, we're going to like it. Here's a command, and you can potentially still dominate the game out of that section.
You're definitely going to have much higher impact in the mid and late game as a 4-spot than you previously did, with very rare 4-spot exceptions. But one thing I will say is that there's going to be a tendency, I think, for pub players, if I had to guess based on what I know about pub players, for, the up until maybe the 4K MMR range.
Yeah.
4-spots are going to have a tendency to want to play like cores. They're going to have a tendency to not want to buy support items. They're going to have a tendency to not want to buy the wards or the dust or the vision.
Right.
And it's going to be really, really important for 4-spots to continue to provide that service to help maintain 5-spot. Because remember, this patch is oriented around keeping a team more or less even. Right. And if you keep your team closer together, it means everybody's going to be active around the same period of time, in a window around the same period of time. So if you have a 4-spot who's refusing to buy wards, refusing to help out the 5-spot, and you have that one hero trailing off, that one in particular hero has a lot of comeback potential. But the rest of your heroes are going to be dragged down by that hero's inability to be.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And keep in mind, guys, as we close this out, if you don't play support generally, some big changes for support that are relevant, and for everybody is there's a new item called the Mango that was just put in. It's a mana version of a Tango, so that's something that you're going to see right out of the gate that you need to know about.
Well, it's actually instant, I think. It's not the mana version of a Tango. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
You use it and you immediately get that back, that mana. So the Mango is really effective, specifically for heroes that have a combination that's very expensive. Like if you're looking at a Shadow Shaman early game, right? You have Hex, you have Shackle, and you have your Nuke, right? And being able to rotate and use all of those is very, very difficult in a lot of situations. There's not a lot of sustain there. But if you get a Mango, then you'll be able to rotate once, go to one lane, use a good chunk of your mana, right? Get a kill. Pop on a Clarity, move to another lane, start the next combo with the mana that came from the Clarity, pop your Mango in the middle of that combo so that you can finish it and get, rotate lane to lane very, very quickly. In addition, it gives you 1 HP regen before you use it, so it gives you just a little bit more sustain as you're moving from lane to lane. It's really an item oriented for rotating supports.
That makes sense. So, interesting item there. I think the other big one to know is that they changed wards. So if you get confused and you buy a sentry ward, add an obs ward, and you're like, where the hell did my sentry wards go? They're going to be in the same slot, and you will be able to, I believe, right-click it. Double-click it, and it will switch the wards. So if you buy them both, there's a good chance you will lose one of them. It's just double-click the wards, and that'll switch it over to the next one. Also, you can buy wards in singles, from what I understand now.
Observer wards come in singles only. But they've been the stock has been doubled, so it's the same number of wards. But it does mean in the early game it's much easier to split that amongst two heroes, which is even more important that the 4-spot not play too excessively greedy in the early game. because you can split that up a little bit more easily and maybe make it so that the roaming potential of your team is much stronger.
Absolutely. So
getting
wards,
early boots on 2 heroes faster.
Mischance has been removed on wards, so if you are dewarding, there's no longer the fear of dewarding the high ground Roche ward for 20 minutes. You can go in, pop it, and leave. And also, tangos, if you use a tango on a ward, you get double the healing. So if your ward on the safe lane is about to expire, run over and eat it with a tango. Get the additional benefit out of that. Is there any other changes that you think are really relevant that we should make sure that folks know?
All of the items are it's going to be difficult to memorize them all right out of the gate, but they are all very, very important. Like, these are all really interesting, unique items that, unlike, for the most part, when items are dropped in bulk into Dota throughout history, they typically do something similar to what either a hero already does or another item already does. And there are rare exceptions, like, if you go back to, it might be 5.53, I'm not entirely positive, then Force Staff was dropped in, and that did a thing that you really didn't have ever before. But, I mean, in this patch, we have an item that's going to be dropped in that is going to reduce the cooldown of all of your spells. You have an item that's dropped in that has an armor and HP regen buff that is dependent on how much health your allies have. So, in the Guardian Greaves, which is a high-end support item, or maybe a high-end off-lane item, depending on what off-laner you are.
Right.
If your allies are below 20% health, it goes from a 2 armor and 4 HP regen buff. For that specific ally, it goes up to 15 armor and 15 regen per second. So it's a really good item for recovering from fights. Not necessarily a great item to have in terms of sustaining inside of a fight, other than the fact that it gives you the same thing that Mechanism and Arcane Boots give. But in terms of recovering from a fight and pushing, it is very effective. So once again, another item oriented toward pushing. There's a lot toward supporting and a lot toward pushing oriented on this patch.
Quick question. Do you know if Lotus Orb stacks with Blade Mail?
What aspect of Lotus Orb?
So Lotus Orb reflects a targeted spell back at the person who casts it?
So it doesn't reflect it. It makes a copy. So if I get hit by a spell while under Lotus Orb, I will still take all of the effects of that spell, but the caster will also take all of the effects of that spell.
So the theory about... So basically my question is, so if I pop... Let's say that Lena's bearing down on me.
Yes, you can instantly kill Lena with Blade Mail and Lotus Orb. Yeah.
So I pop both. If she's dumb enough to cast it, she dies. So if you guys like to play Lena, if you like to play heavy hitters like that, or Lion, go and open up a bot game or a practice lobby and look at the animation for Lotus Orb so that you know when it's up. Because if you pop it on Lotus Orb, just like Blade Mail, it's going to pretty much obliterate you. So
Lotus Orb with Blade Mail in that sense will 100% stack. You'll take the Blade Mail damage, and then you'll take the Lotus Orb damage from the returned animation. And that's really effective against nukers, who, for the most part, most nukers have either directly or indirectly received some buffs this patch. Magic damage is a lot more sustainable, with the exception of the fact that there are a lot more viable magic resist items to buy. But in terms of if your opponents aren't buying the magic resist, your nukers and your intelligence supports are going to have a lot more life in them in the game.
Okay. So I think that wraps it up. I think that gives us a good idea of where the patch is. Hopefully you guys got a lot out of it. It's a relatively short patch analysis in the grand scheme of things. Tell your friends about it. We're going to put it up on YouTube. It'll be on the podcast. It'll be on SoundCloud, and it's one that we're going to leave up for a while so that if you do have questions, if you're curious about something, you can always go back and watch it. And by the same token, please feel free to tweet questions about the patch, especially to the Wonder Cow. If you tweet at the Wonder Cow your patch questions, I am fairly certain that as long as he sees them and is not too busy, he eats this stuff up and will be able to sort of help out with understanding what's going on. So check it out. Make sure you follow him over on Twitter, Gorgon the Wonder Cow, at the Wonder Cow is where you find him. Gorgon, I appreciate you being on the show today. Do you have any last thoughts before we sign out?
Just make sure you guys are following me on Twitter. I'm going to be putting up specific calculations and notes on specific heroes or combinations as I think of them or see them. And then also on Join Dota, where I'm Elder Staff, I'm going to be putting up an editorial tomorrow that goes over sort of the numbers of whether or not the comeback mechanics of the last 2 patches have made it more likely for bad teams to beat good teams.
Interesting.
It's an interesting analysis, and I believe it'll be up tomorrow.
Awesome. So it'll be out there. Make sure you check it out, guys. You can follow me at Toffees_Dota2. If you want to support the show directly, patreon.com/Toffees. Toffees is the best way to do it. I'm working on a couple of projects, guys. If you do Patreon fund, know that right now the Patreon funding is going towards hats. I decided that I don't want to make shirts because shirts are a pain. But what I am going to do is get flex fit hats made with the Coffee with Toffees logo. The only problem we're running into is it's about $80 to get the initial digitization of the logo. But once that's out, I'll be able to sell the hats for about $25 a piece, which I think is a pretty good deal for a flex fit hat that you'll wear all the time. So that's what we're going for. The other thing that we're working on right now is a laptop, because apparently I'm going to be attending LANs aplenty and need to be able to do the show live. I want to do a live summit show, for instance, and I don't own a good laptop to take with me. So I'm pricing laptops now to try and keep Coffee with Toffees functional from a mobile platform. That way we can do live shows from TI, live shows from the summit, whether or not I'm there as staff or just there because it's fun. We want to bring you the content. So make sure you check it out. And a big thank you to Razer, MM1.FM, and Betway for supporting the show. If you're watching and you're thinking, man, I want to be a sponsor, we have one spot left to come on board for the month of May. If you are interested in that last sponsor spot, get in touch with me at Twitter or on 5midasgaming@gmail.com. We'd be more than happy to have you. And that is, I was asked today, Gorgon, by somebody. They said, can I pay to have my face in the sponsor spot? And I said, you know what? If you want to pay,
you're paying, yeah.
I will put your picture up. I'll put your birthday wishes. I will put your Twitter tag on the top of the show because you know, you guys, you're the ones who are helping to make the show possible. So, guys, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful evening. I'm sorry if I sounded tired. I'd been casting for 3 hours.
You were casting. I've been doing patch analysis basically 14 hours of the last 16 hours. We're both tired. It's all right.
So we're tired. Hopefully you enjoyed the show, guys. Come back next week, or Friday, we'll have the tournament roundup, and then next week we'll be back with some more fun stuff for you. So have a great day. Have a great night. Play more Dota, and as always, Toffees out.
Mm.